this little so-called budget laptop, turns out it's not a box full of disappointment. No, this thing, the one I was ready to toss aside like a bad date, actually had some tricks up its sleeve. It's not going to win any awards, but damn, if it doesn't pack a little more punch than I thought. So let's get into it and see why this underdog might just be more interesting than it first seems. Now as we dive into the build, you might be thinking, alright, let's see if this laptop is as tough as it sounds. And honestly, it's like ASUS decided to stick with what works. ASUS has stuck pretty close to the design of its Intel powered brother, the TUF A15, which is both reassuring and little meh at the same time. The first thing you will notice is the same keyboard layout like we have in the all other TUF laptop, like the old ones. The lid has ditched the circular accent and now rocks these minimal bars in the corners. It's all about simplicity, but that simplicity gives off a workhorse vibe rather than anything flashy. It's a smooth chain and honestly it feels like a bit more grown up. It's dressed in a no-nonsense dark grey which suits the whole vibe. But let's talk about quirks. The 16:9 aspect ratio means there's a thick bottom bezel that gives it a bit of a retro feel. They look sleek until they got covered with fingerprints. So yeah, keep a microfiber cloth nearby because this thing's going to need a constant cleaning like a black car after a rainstorm. The lid's got a nice metal finish which feels premium, but the rest of the body is solid plastic. It holds up well, though the keyboard area has a little flex if you pressed hard enough. No creaking though. Where it does fall a bit short is with this screen. The lid is pretty thin and the pressing lightly on the back caused the screen to ripple a bit. Plus, the hinge only opens to about 135 degrees, which might not leave you wishing for just a little more screen flexibility. Now moving from the body to what you will actually be touching the most, the keyboard. ASUS has clearly thought about comfort here. The TUF A15's keyboard is comfy to type on and even comes with full numeric keyboard, perfect for those long gaming sessions or work marathon. But it's not all smooth sailing. There's a small design issue. The key labels, aside from the white WSD keys, the rest of the lettering is transparent, and even in good lighting, it can be hard to make out. The layout is mostly solid, though it might take a second to get used to the single row enter key. You will end up relying on the backlight, but at least ASUS gives you 3 brightness settings and an option to choose your own color, even if it's just one zone. Above the keyboard, you get 4 special keys, 3 for volume control and 1 customizable for shortcuts. One little problem though, the arrow keys are pretty small for a gaming laptop, which might make fast-paced gaming a bit trickier. The touchpad does a good job overall. Swiping is smooth and the surface feels nice and responsive. The click is quite enough not to disrupt your game or whatever else you are doing. Of course, if you are serious about gaming, you will probably swap to external mouse or controller, but for day-to-day stuff, it works just fine. Now let's talk about ports. Most of them are crammed on the left side with a lonely USB Type 3.2 Gen 1 chilling on the right. On the left, you have got the whole squad: power port, Ethernet, HDMI, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type A ports, 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port, and a headphone jack. Sounds good, right? Sure, but if you are hooking a bunch of gears, it gets tight. Between your mouse, keyboard and headset, you will be playing a weird game of musical chair just to get everything plugged in. The TUF A15 is your ticket to solid gaming without breaking the bank. But like any hero, it's not perfect. The colors are pretty average, so it's not great for things like color grading, and the contrast is about what you would expect from a similarly priced laptops. But it's a lot dimmer compared to the fancy screens you will find on the higher end machines. That said, it is still good enough for the GPU to do its things. No need for faster screen here. Another thing to consider is the screen size. You are going back to the classic 16:9 aspect ratio, which feels a bit cramped after trying out those 16:10 displays on laptops like the ROG Zephyrus G16, Nitro 16 and G14. After using those, the A15 felt like I was stuck in a letterbox. So if you have only used a 16:9 screen, you will probably won't notice, but once you have gotten used to that extra height, yeah, it's tough to go back. Now while the screen might not be winning any beauty contest, the real magic happens under the hood. When it comes to the storage, the A15 has you covered with 2 M.2 SSD slots, each supporting up to 2 TB, so you won't need to worry about running out of space at any time soon. For memory, there are 2 SODIMM slots that can hold up to 32 GB of DDR5 4800 MHz RAM in dual channel mode. Talking about cooling, this laptop is built like a mini powerhouse. It's got 2 fans, 2 heat pipes working hard to keep the GPU and the CPU cool. Each chip gets its own dedicated heat pipe, plus a 5th one just for the GPU memory and the VRM. With 4 heat sinks and heat spreaders in the mix, it's got a cooling system that can handle the heat like a pro. Now we know it can handle the heat. Now let's see how it performs when it really put to the test. I ran it through some benchmarks to see how it really stacks up. First up, we have got the Blender Classroom 3.3 test, basically a way to see how good it is at 3D rendering. The Ryzen 7 7435HS scores 340, which is a decent spot to be in. It's a step up from the older 6800H, which hits 268 but falls short of the Intel i5-13450HX, which topped it with 397. So yeah, if you are into 3D stuff like modeling or animations, the A15 can handle it, though it's better for lighter workloads or hobby projects. Now let's talk about Geekbench, a test that allows at how well your CPU can handle everything: gaming, multitasking, video editing, you name it. The 7435HS scores 11,000 on multi-core and 2,053 for single core. Not too shabby, huh? For comparison, the 6800H hits 9,642. So there's a nice little boost here. Obviously, if you stack it against something like the Intel i9-13900HK, which is matched with 13,629, you will see a huge gap. But let's be practical, you are probably not comparing it with the Intel's flagship. For everyday use, it's fast, responsive and handles multitasking like a champ. But let's be real, that's in a whole other price range. Moving on to the Cinebench 2024, the 7435HS scores 725 on multi-core and 89 for single core. It's on par with the competition, with the 6800H landing 709 and the i5-13450HX did better at 812. But honestly, unless you are doing hardcore rendering all day, the TUF A15 has more than enough juice for most workflows. Finally, we have got the 3D Mark Time Spy, the test every gamer wants to see. Here's the Ryzen 7 7435HS hits 10,192, a solid number. It's a neck and neck with the 6800H, which scored 10,198. So you have got pretty similar gaming performance. Of course, it's not going to keep up with something like the i9-3900HK at 13,169. For modern games played with a good GPU, you are looking at a butter smooth gaming experience at a high setting levels. Alright, let's cut to the chase. The ASUS TUF A15 with the RTX 2050 is like your dependable, no-nonsense sidekick. So let's see how it does in some of the latest titles at 1080p. Black Myth Wukong is the first up, and honestly, the RTX 2050 puts up a decent fight here. It pushes out about 63 FPS on medium setting, which is pretty solid, but don't expect about absolute smoothness during the big action scenes. The graphics still pop, but you will feel the slight hiccups when things get really intense. If you wanna crank it up to the ultra level smoothness, you are gonna need a bigger GPU like the 6GB RTX 3050. Next, we hit GTA 5, where the 2050 actually holds its ground pretty well. At 91 FPS on very high settings, it feels like you are just gliding through the streets of Los Santos. It's the sweet spot for casual gamers, no complaints here. If you're not chasing max performance, this thing's got you covered. But then, Far Cry 6 comes in with that smooth, beautiful open world chaos. And here the RTX 2050 starts to show some cracks. The 50 FPS on high settings isn't terrible, but you might not starting noticing some stutter in those big explosions and dense jungle areas. Now let's talk about the Cyberpunk 2077, the beast, the legend. And the RTX 2050, yeah, it's kinda struggles. 25 to 30 FPS on medium settings is just about playable. But let's be real, you will feel like the lag, especially in crowded areas or during intense shootouts. If Cyberpunk is your jam, you will want to step up to something more powerful. This card isn't just built for it. If you really wanna play Cyberpunk at good FPS, you might consider lower down the settings. Finally, the Red Dead Redemption 2. The 2050 puts up about 40 FPS on medium settings. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not the butter experience you'd hope for. There is a noticeable dip in performance, especially in the more scenic moments of the games. If you can live with the slight settings and some settings dialed back, it will work, but it's nothing to write about home. Now, while the gaming performance might not always be butter smooth, the TUF A15 does a decent job when it comes to the sound department. The audio on the ASUS TUF A15 is okay. The speakers get pretty loud, hitting 79.3 decibels, which is enough for most gaming or casual listening, but don't expect anything amazing. The bass is kinda weak, around 13.7 below average, but it stays consistent. The mids are pretty solid, about 7.6% above average, so voices and instruments can come through well. The highs are surprisingly balanced, just a slight 2.1% off, so everything sounds clear and crisp. The bottom line is that the TUF A15 gets the job done, but don't expect mind-blowing audio. It's fine, nothing more, nothing less. Now, while the sound may not blow you away, the thermals are really trying to keep the laptop cool. When it's idling, the TUF A15 stays pretty cool, with the keyboard hovering around 26 degrees Celsius, at the underside at 26.4 degrees Celsius. But once you start gaming or pushing it with heavy tasks, things heat up fast. Under max load, the keyboard gets as hot as 48.9 degrees Celsius in the middle, and the underside peaks at 44.6 degrees degrees Celsius. If you are playing something like the Red Dead Redemption 2, expect the keyboard to hit around 42.6 degrees, while the bottom stays a bit cooler at 35 degrees Celsius. So yeah, it stays cool for lighter tasks, but it gets pretty warm under heavy load. A cooling pad might be a good idea if you are planning to push it too hard. Speaking of light tasks, this laptop does surprisingly well when it comes to battery life. The 90 Wh battery can last about 8.5 hours if you are doing lighter tasks. I mean really lighter tasks on eco mode, which is decent for gaming laptop. The charger is a bit bulky, but it's still smaller than some of the giant bricks on other laptops in the same price category. But don't expect the full power to be available when you are not plugged in. The CPU starts off pulling 45 watts of power, then quickly dropping to 32 watts. This results in a 20% dip in multi-core performance, meaning full power is really only available when plugged in. Of course, all that power and cooling can create some noise. Luckily, the TUF A15 keeps it under control. When idle, it operates at 23.3 decibels, which is nearly silent and blends in with the ambient noise. Under load, it ramps up to between 29.6 decibels to 43.5 decibels. At 29.6 decibels is still pretty quiet, but heavier tasks pushes it into a more noticeable 43 decibels. Overall, it's pretty balanced. Alright, here's the scoop. The TUF A15 is no joke. It's a budget beast you have been looking for if you want a game without selling your kidney. With that Ryzen 7 7435HS and the RTX 2050, you are getting smooth 1080p gaming on medium settings. Nothing too crazy, but it gets the job done. It's like your reliable sidekick, sturdy with a comfortable keyboard and the sweet bonus of being able to upgrade your storage and RAM later. But hold up, it's not perfect. The screen is dim and not great if you are about that creative life. And the RTX 2050, it's like that underdog that's good but not gonna win any races on the ultra settings. Expect some stutter if you are playing Cyberpunk 2077 on medium to high settings, or something that you want to flex its muscles. Also, if you are a type who need multiple ports, the TUF A15 might leave you feeling a bit cramped. And that battery life, not gonna last a full night of gaming. So who is this for? Casual gamers, students, or anyone who just needs a reliable laptop to get through the day. If you are out here chasing the elite 4K ultra setting dreams or need a killer screen, this probably isn't your vibe. But for rest of us, it's a solid no-nonsense deal. Now if you are thinking, hey, I need this in my life, or wanna check out the other TUF variants, I've got you covered. You'll find the best buying links in the description box down below. Use those links and you will snag some killer deals. Trust me. Now if you are into reading, like really into reading, you can catch the full review at melworm.com. Links also down below, so don't miss it. And also if you have any questions regarding this laptop or any other variant, you can join my Telegram group and comment there. Alright, that's it from me. If this review really helped you, go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe for more, or comment with your thoughts. Got any questions or wanna share your TUF A15 experience? Hit me up in the comment section. Until next time, stay chill and game on.